I'm Colleen, and I'm back for another live stream brought to you by the awesome people over at Princess Dental Staffing. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day to everyone. So happy that you could spend some time with me today. Okay, so today's topic is how to have your dental hygienist resume stand out. So we're going to be talking about, a dental hygienist resume and, how you can help it stand out from the stack, okay? You have about between 5 to 7 seconds to impress the potential employer, okay? 5 to 7, it's not very much, guys. So how are we going to use those 5 to 7 seconds to, really elevate the impact of our resumes, okay, in order to get through the application process and hopefully snag that interview, okay? That's what we're going to be discussing today. But before we do that, just want to remind everyone that we are bringing you new topics, streaming new topics each week on Wednesdays, okay? So you don't want to miss out on future streams. Be sure to follow our page or subscribe to our channel. Okay, if you like the information that we're bringing you and the topics that we're bringing you, be sure to drop us a like. If you have any thoughts, questions, insights, anything like that on the information that we're bringing you, be sure to comment it below. And if we couldn't get to it when the stream was live, of course, we will definitely get to it as soon as possible. Okay, now if you want more information on the topics that we're bringing you, you can check out Princess Dental Staffing's blog by visiting their website, princessdentalstaffing.com. So just a little bit about Princess Dental Staffing. They are an online dental job board where you can, like I said, on their site, you can also check out their blog, but it is also super easy to start searching for dental jobs in your area. They are offering, full-time, part-time, permanent, and temporary positions for dental assistants, for front office personnel, dentists, and yes, even dental hygienists as well. So PDS rocks. Yes, it does, Ralph. Absolutely. Their website's super easy to navigate. You can also, while you're searching for jobs, you can also create a profile and get your information in front of, decision makers and potential hiring managers. Okay. And you can use your resume. So let's talk about a dental hygienist resume. Okay. So again, you have about 5 to 7 seconds to really impress that potential employer. Okay. Or maybe the human resources person or whoever your resume ends up in front of. You've got about 5 to 7 seconds. They've done studies on this. The latest I heard was an average of about a little over 7 seconds that recruiters and potential employers spend reviewing your resume and deciding whether or not they're going to push it through the application process. Okay, there've been different studies and they all kind of say different things, but about 7 seconds is what you get. Okay, so how do you make your resume stand out? How do you impress, your knowledge, skills, and abilities within 7 seconds? Let's talk about it. Okay, first of all, when you're writing your resume, know your audience. Okay, speak to your audience. PDS is great. Thank you for all you do. Awesome. Thanks for that comment. So make sure that you're speaking to your audience, okay? Think about what the hiring manager is looking for and, write your resume based on that information and your skills in those areas, okay? So, I know a lot of people when they sit down to write a resume or, update your resume that hasn't been updated in 2, 5, maybe even 10 years, I know it gets a little bit tedious, right? It gets a little boring to write. And I promise you there are tons and tons of, potential hiring managers out there and, recruiters, et cetera, who, it gets a little tedious for them reading all those resumes as well, which is probably why the screening process is only about 7 seconds. It gets to be a little bit tedious, okay? But here's the good news. The good news is because they're looking at an average of 7 seconds, maybe a little bit less, maybe about 5 seconds or so, what you're focusing on when you're writing your resume. You want to focus on making sure that your knowledge, skills, and abilities, they stand out and that they can be scanned and seen within 7 seconds, okay? So So that's so that's kind of the advantage of knowing that, right? It's kind of the advantage because you know what you're focusing on. Okay, what you want to think about is why should a hiring manager call you back, and make sure you focus your resume on that. Okay, that is true. It's always important to remember your own strengths. Absolutely, Drew. Yeah, absolutely know your own strengths. And where your skills lie, so that you can explain it. And make it come across very clearly and concisely. Okay. So firstly, when writing, know your audience, write to your audience. So just a little bit more on that. If a lot of people get stuck. I get a lot of clients who are like, I do not know what to write. I don't know what to put in this resume. I have no clue. The best thing to do is to look at the job posting. Okay, the job description, the job posting on wherever you found it. Maybe PDF, Princess Dental Staffing's website, and make sure you take a look at that. Specifically, hone in on the qualification section, the requirements section. It's called different things, but basically that section in the job posting where they're talking about all the things that they're looking for in a potential employee. Those are the answers to the test. Okay, this is specifically what they're looking for. So if you're still having trouble deciding, what should I write? What should I include? I've got a few more lines. Should I, add a little bit more information? Make sure you check out those qualifications and write your resume to, the qualifications requirements, what they're looking for. That's another great way to figure out what your audience is looking for. Okay, and tailor those resumes to each and every job posting. Yes, I know it's even more tedious, and yeah, I know you don't want to do it. I recommend that you do it anyway. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, make sure that you are professional. Like we said, a lot of people get daunted or just kind of bored in writing their resume. So they try to do something to kind of, make it more fun, right? Make it more kind of stand out. And that's where I find a lot of my clients can fall into the trap of, oh, I'm going to include, all kinds of different fonts, about 12 different types of fonts and different font sizes and infographics and smart graphs and pictures and icons and shapes and colors and all these different things. And that's fine. It's okay to add a little bit of color and to use some fonts and some formatting styles. Just don't go overboard. Okay, you want the content to speak for itself, because at the end of the day, the content is the most important part of the resume. The content, the information that you're giving to the potential employer, that's what's going to get you through the application process. Okay, so all this kind of extra stuff, you don't necessarily need it. And a lot of people, I find a lot of clients too, they feel almost like pressured. They feel sort of like, oh, they have to have all these different bells and whistles on their resume, and that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily what always stands out. Yes, having a nice looking and eye-catching resume is one element that's really going to help impress your potential employer. But that's one part of your resume. The really, really important stuff is the content. So if you're not someone who, works a lot with Google Docs or Microsoft Word or, PDFs or anything like that, and you don't have a lot of experience, with all that formatting, don't worry about it. At the end of the day, black and white is totally fine. Just a black and white resume. Really what you want to look for is that your resume lends to easy readability. Okay, that you're using your headers well, that you are using some formatting elements where appropriate. So for example, bullet points. Okay, bullet points make it easier for potential employers to really anyone to review your resume and read through all of the information. Strategic bolding of words or underlining sometimes, can really make it much easier to kind of break up and read. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to include all this stuff and all these gimmicks and all this marketing stuff. You don't necessarily have to do that. Some of the best resumes are just clean and organized and just, read really well, top to bottom like a book. Okay, so now when we're talking about, how to let's talk about formatting your resume. How are we going to format your resume? Well, there's several different resume formats that are commonly used. Actually, there's like a lot of them. The main ones you're going to hear about are functional, reverse chronological, and combination. Okay, So those are going to be the main. Now there are other ones, obviously CVs and all, and info resumes and all these sorts of things. But the main ones you're probably going to be hearing about are functional, reverse chronological, and combination format or combination format. Okay, so we're going to talk about the different format styles and what's included with each of them, and that way you can make an informed decision on which style you want to go with, and that's going to work best in displaying your knowledge, skills, and abilities. Because again, that's what we're getting to, right? That's the essence that we're trying to focus on. Okay. It does always seem hard to balance out the fun and the serious. I think the keep it simple, stupid method is a good idea, like you're saying. Thanks, Drew. Yeah, absolutely. When in doubt, just keep it simple. Don't try to go too overboard with it. Again, the content is what's going to get you through the application process. That's the most important part. That's the meat. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. So let's talk about these styles. First style is functional style resume format. It's not seen as often. This is definitely not one of the more popular format styles, resume format styles, but it is in existence and it does work for certain people. For example, functional styles, you generally see functional styles when you have, very, very little experience in a specific area. So if you don't have a lot of experience as a dental hygienist, you may consider a functional style format. Okay, so basically what sets a functional style format apart from all the other resume format styles is that it's focused more so on skills than experience. Okay, so basically you typically see, you typically see some, different skills listed. Okay, and then kind of examples or a little bit more information on those skills and what you bring to the table. So, for example, let's talk about excellent patient care. So, if you're doing a functional style format, what you might want to talk about is excellent patient care. It's really important for a dental hygienist, right, to have excellent patient care skills. Okay, so under your excellent patient skill or excellent patient care like skills header, you might say things like provided and assisted in all forms of patient care from their entrance as a patient and exit. You might say conducted and reassured patients of their upcoming treatments. You might say followed up with clients until they felt comfortable proceeding. Explain the pharmacology of the drugs being used and administered in their processes. Cultured and provided an open line of contact throughout their visit. Those are some things that you might list. So you can kind of see how just kind of the impact of listing just the skills. These are the skills that I have. Okay. Again, it's not largely used, but it does have value and it does have merit. So if you're focusing more so on your skills, especially if you're just starting out, this might be the format for you. Okay. So let's talk about the second one, reverse chronological style resume format. Sometimes it's just called chronological for short, and the reverse part is kind of like understood. Sometimes it's called chrono. Sometimes I've seen it like shortened to chrono, because reverse chronological, it's a bit of a mouthful, right? It's kind of a lot. But reverse chronological, chrono, those are basically the same thing. So basically the focus of this resume format style is your experience, right? So, we're talking about, your experience, and we're listing it reverse chronologically, meaning the most recent is first, and then you kind of go backwards, okay? So again, the focus is, mostly on your experience. This is the experience I bring to the table. So you can kind of see how like a reverse chronological format, it differs from a functional format in that it's focused more so on your actual experience, whereas functional is more so focused on your skills, right? So you can kind of see how that works. Other parts of a reverse chronological format also include your education, obviously. Sometimes it can also include like your achievements or your skills as well. Sometimes those achievements are actually just listed under, each of your job entries in your work history. So it really just kind of depends. And then, of course, your employment history, which is kind of the main part. And you can add other things as well, like, some sort of introduction, like an objective statement or something like that. But, a reverse chronological is definitely the most, it's definitely one of the more common it's one of the more common. It's not the most common, but it's definitely one of the more common formats. It's the one you generally think of when you think of a resume. Okay. Now, lastly, let's talk about a combination style format. So combination is the most widely used because it's generally a combination of, functional and reverse chronological. Okay, combination is kind of anything goes. That's the main reason why it's probably the most popular, is because it's kind of laissez-faire. You get to do whatever you want with it. Okay, and it generally includes elements not just from functional and reverse chronological, but also CV elements or infograph elements or things like that. You could do whatever you want with it. Okay, so it gives you a little bit more room to be creative and to list out your information as you see fit, as you find it to be the most impactful and the most impressive. Okay, so let's talk about that. So some things you can include are, for example, a professional summary, maybe an objective statement if you want. It normally has some sort of introduction. And the trend that I've been seeing lately with combination formats is that the introduction is taking up more and more room on the first page, like a good third to a half of the first page. Yeah, I know. And it can be, I know that kind of sounds kind of a little crazy, but it can be very, very impactful, having maybe a longer resume summary, or, and listing out some, career accomplishments or highlights of career, your skills section, technical skills, those sorts of things. So it can be very impactful. Again, it's really going to depend on your particular background as to, which one's going to work best for you. But that's kind of the style I've been seeing lately, much longer introduction. Okay. And of course, relevant skills, good skills section is a really great way to get in those keywords and phrases. Your work history, of course, right? Your education, your certifications, and, other additional subheaders can be included as well, such as volunteer work or community leadership, technical skills, awards, accolades, honors, those sorts of things. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff you can do with a combination format. So it can be very, very helpful. That's definitely probably the one that's most seen recently. So that's probably the one you're going to see most. Okay. So those are the different combination formats. So let's talk about ATSs. Okay. But before we dive into that, it's crazy how we all typically tend to work in the reverse chronological format, but never really had it explained or put a name to it. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely tons and tons of different types out there. Reverse chronological is usually what people think of when they think of a resume, but there's definitely some other elements. You definitely have a little bit more freedom to play with it and to kind of tailor it to your specific needs and, what you want to put in your resume in order to make, your information shine through. Okay. So let's talk about ATSs and making sure your resume is optimized for ATSs. Okay. So just kind of a quick, and I've kind of talked about this a little bit in previous streams, but let's kind of go over it. An ATS is an applicant tracking system. It's a system that a lot of companies use to track their open positions and the applications and resumes for those specific positions. Okay. Now, it's worth noting that not all companies use an ATS. Some companies still, just kind of review each resume and read through each resume. So that's why it's important to have a resume that, it is well organized and lends well to easy readability, but is also ATS friendly. Okay, because you don't always know which one you're going to get, right? Now, last I checked, there are about 200 plus different ATSs out there. Okay, so it's really difficult to say, which company, if they're using an ATS, which one are they using, and what are the specific rules, etc. That's really kind of a difficult thing to kind of pin down. But there are some general rules that we adhere to in order to consider a resume ATS friendly, or sometimes ATS compliant is what you'll hear. ATS friendly, ATS compliant. Generally, ATSs are used by larger companies, okay, just because they have more jobs open across the country or outside the country. So generally, it's going to be a larger company. So if you're applying for a larger company, prepare for an ATS, okay? Now, a lot of these modern ATSs have a lot of different features in them, okay? One of the more popular features is called parsing. Basically, the ATS takes your resume and it breaks it up into pieces in order to be read and processed by the ATS. And sometimes some things can kind of go awry in that parsing process, which is why it's so important to have an ATS compliant or an ATS friendly resume. Okay. Another huge feature is what they call job scan. So basically, the ATS scans your resume and scans the job posting, and it's going to determine based on that scan how well you meet the criteria for that job posting, and it may or may not push you through the application process. So again, really, really important to read that job posting and tailor your resume to each and every job posting and using those keywords and phrases that you find in the job posting. Okay. Yeah, ATS is tricky. It is tricky, Drew, because like I said, there's 200 plus different ATS systems out there, and they all kind of have their different rules and what they can and can't accept and what they can and can't read. But we do have a general set of rules that we want to follow so that, you know, it can help us push through the application process. So some of the general rules that you want to kind of adhere to, you know, you want to stay away from columns as much as possible, simply because most ATSs, they read left to right. Okay, so if you have, you know, headers for two different columns, okay, it might get a little bit confused and it might not pull over the information. You also want to make sure that you're using consistent headers throughout the resume. So, you know, the way you use one header, use it for the rest of the different sections of your resume, whichever sections you decide that you want to include. Okay. Text boxes are still kind of iffy. So ATSs are continuing to evolve and be able to read information better and be able to process these resumes better. But text boxes still tend to be kind of an iffy issue. Some of them can read the information in text boxes, some of them not so much. Some of them just skip over them entirely. So text boxes you kind of want to stay away from in order to optimize the ATS compliance of your resume. Okay, so those are kind of some things. Also, you know, icons, they definitely don't like icons. Some of them will just skip over, but some of them, it will kind of mess up the parsing part of your resume or the job scan part of your resume. So you kind of want to stay away from icons and too many icons and infographics. Okay, so those are just kind of some of the general rules in order to help help your resume to push through the ATS and therefore the application process. Okay. Okay. So we talked about how we write our resume, you know, making sure that you're writing to your audience. We talked about the different formats that you can use, and we talked about ATS compliance. So let's talk about other ways that you can help your resume stand out. First of all, networking, okay? The resume can't do all of the heavy lifting for you. You've got to do a little bit of work in networking as well. So make sure you're building your network and establishing and cultivating those business relationships, because a lot of the times, you know, the statistics are still really, really high regarding, you know, networking and getting a new job as well. Okay, something like 80% of new jobs are obtained through networking, I think was the last statistic I saw. Okay, so networking is very, very important to kind of build your network with not only people in the dental industry, but also the decision makers in the dental industry, those potential hiring managers, etc. Okay, goes a long way. Okay. Writing a cover letter with your resume. I get so many clients who are like, they're not going to read it. Why do I even bother? I'm not going to put any time, effort, and energy into this. And I think that's a real mistake, because yes, worst case scenario, the potential employer isn't going to read your cover letter, but best case scenario, they read your cover letter verbatim and they get a little bit of extra information. They get a little bit more of you and what you bring to the table. So it can be something to help you stand out. Okay. So I definitely think it's worth it. Resume objectives, okay? So, you know, having an objective statement, really having an introduction of some kind, really kind of helps entice the potential employer to, you know, read through your resume and really capture their attention, you know, especially if you're using really strong keywords in your objective, okay? So, you know, I definitely recommend including an introduction in your resume. Again, you've got about 5 to 7 seconds, and they usually start at the top and work their way down, right? So an introduction can go a long way. A nice objective statement can go a long way. Cut the fluff, okay? So we talk about, especially in resume writing, we talk about a fluff, we use the word fluff a lot, right? You've got, you've started your accomplishment statement with, 5 different adjectives and adverbs. That's a lot of fluff, okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with using adjectives and adverbs in your resume, but make sure that you're using them strategically and that you're not overusing them. Make sure when you read the statement or read the sentence that you can pull forward some of the key words, the key skill words out of there. Those should really be the highlight. The key skill words, keywords and phrases in your statements, those should really be the highlights, okay? So you don't want to kind of dilute your statements with using effectively and efficiently and too much, okay? So definitely cut the fluff, alrighty? Don't necessarily have to add a lot of content in order to be impactful and to get the point across, okay? Make sure you include your state-specific licenses. So I believe it was on the stream last week, we talked about, there are going to be different state requirements for dental hygienists, right? Different states are going to require different, education or different, licenses and certifications. So make sure you check your state. And I think I included a link, if I recall correctly, I included a link to where you can check, each state's requirements. Make sure you include that on your resume. Really, really important, especially if you are looking to move to a different state or a different area, okay? So make sure those are listed, okay? Alrighty, and lastly, make sure you use strong action verbs. So I'm actually going to include a link at the end of the stream, on this video, and it's going to be It's going to be a link that I use quite a bit. It's 185 action verbs to help your resume stand out. You definitely want to use some strong action verbs. You definitely don't want to use the same ones over and over again, just like I'm using definitely right now. But if you find yourself using the same verbs over and over again, provide, manage, ensure, you want to kind of change it up a little bit and make your resume flow. It helps the resume flow a little bit better, and it also helps create a compelling story about your work history and your experience and expertise. Okay, so I'm going to include a link below. It's a really great resource. But you want to use, strong action verbs like administered, diagnosed, supervised, spearheaded, facilitated. All these are really great strong action verbs that can really help create a compelling resume. Using action verbs is like avoiding selling yourself short, it seems. Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yes, exactly. You definitely want to use strong action verbs because you want to tie those actions to direct results as much as possible in your resume. Okay. So you definitely want to use those strong action verbs so that you can, not only tie the actions to results, but also to create a resume that lends well to easy readability and just kind of flows a little bit, tells a story about you and what you bring to the table. Okay. Alrighty, so let's do a quick review. Okay, so we talked about, so we're talking about, dental hygienist resumes. About 5 to 7 seconds is what you're looking for in the initial scan. So once you're done with your resume, scan it really quick. Put it down for like 30 minutes and come back and scan it really quick and see which words are standing out to you. Okay. Make sure that you're writing to your audience, okay? Make sure that you're checking those job postings, really hitting on those qualifications very heavily in your resume, okay? And make sure you're answering the question, why should I call this person back, okay? Be professional. Don't overdo it with all of the, all of the graphics and all these sorts of things, all these different colors and fonts and all these sorts of things. Be professional. At the end of the day, black and white is really, really great and can be very impactful, okay? The content is really what we're looking for, okay? Make sure that you're choosing make sure you're choosing the appropriate format for your resume. We talked about elements of functional, reverse chronological or chrono, and or combination format or combo format, okay? Make sure your resume is ATS optimized. It gives you a better chance of getting through the application process and pushing through to get that interview, okay? And then other ways to stand out, networking, writing a cover letter. Always recommend writing a cover letter, including resume objective, cutting out the fluff from your resume, including your state-specific licenses. So make sure, especially if you're moving, make sure that you check out do a little bit of research and figure out which ones you need and go ahead and include those on there, and make sure you use strong action verbs. So thanks for being here with me today, everyone. I'm so glad that you got to spend this time with me on this Wednesday. So I hope that you found this information helpful. We're going to be back next week with another topic talking about, starting and or maintaining your career in the dental industry. In the meantime, have a great week. Have a great weekend. I will see you soon. Thanks for all the great comments. Bye, everyone.